clinical trials.
tDCS, as it's currently done in hospitals, in research centers, is considered very safe and very well tolerated. That is a very specific set of protocols. It's a very specific environment. It's a very specific set of devices.
He showed me how his research team builds computer models to predict how current hits the brain.
And what you're looking at here is what shows up actually at the brain. Warmer colors represent more current flow. You can see here's one electrode, here's the other. The red square is the anode electrode, and the blue square is the cathode electrode. The simplest way to think about it is the anode is the positive terminal of the battery, and the cathode is the negative terminal of the battery. And your head is the circuit.
When tDCS is applied in lab settings like this, it's typically no more than 2 milliamps of electricity, about the amount needed to power a small LED light bulb. The amount that actually reaches the cortex of the brain after passing through layers of skin, skull, fat, and cerebrospinal fluid is even smaller.
So what the brain is being bathed in is actually a very, very low level of direct current flow passing along the neurons. The brain is super sensitive to electricity because the brain uses electricity. The neurons in the brain have a voltage across them. And for a neuron at rest, which is sort of like a neuron sitting around and doing nothing, that's around minus 80 millivolts. If that voltage starts to increase for some reason, and if it increases enough to what's called a threshold, that might be around minus 60 millivolts, it on its own then makes a decision to fire an action potential.
So instead of actually forcing a neuron to fire, you're just tweaking how much more input it needs, natural input it needs from the brain to fire on its own.
That's a good way to put it. It took me 10 years of research to come to that.
I figured this was the right place to try tDCS for the first time.
All right, I'm all rigged up. I'm about to do transcranial direct stimulation in a controlled environment. So don't try this at home. All right, so I'm getting 1.5 milliamps of stimulation, and I can definitely feel it on my skin. It's a little bit burny, prickly, kind of hot, and it kind of is itchy, like I want to scratch it, but I wouldn't say that it hurts.
But I didn't experience anything else.
Actually, for the low intensity that you got, you wouldn't expect to feel like a new person or like you've achieved some sort of, supernatural intelligence.
No, I honestly don't feel any different.
But researchers believe this barely noticeable amount of direct current can prime what's known as plasticity, the brain's natural ability to change.
But if a system is already learning, if a system is already undergoing plasticity, tDCS can enhance that plasticity.
What does tDCS do? What is it generally used for?
It's almost surprising how broad the applications are. So you're talking almost every neuropsychiatric disorder you might think of, let's say like schizophrenia or depression, and you're also talking about applications in cognitive enhancement.
How do you respond to people who say that this is all snake oil?
I've often used that analogy to snake oil myself. If I provided you something in a vial, and I said that that will help you with your depression, it'll help your cousin with their epilepsy, it'll make your niece better at math, and it all comes in one vial, that because I'm making so many claims, it stops being believable. I mean, the simple answer to that is, the tDCS is not one thing. It's not one thing in a vial. The way tDCS is made specific is by where we put the electrodes on the head and how we combine tDCS with training or with behavioral therapy.